Hello, everybody. Welcome. My name is Hannah, and I am the events coordinator for Books Inc., which is out in the San Francisco Bay Area for those of you who are not local. And before we get started, I'm just going to walk you through some Zoom basics and how we're going to run our event. So you'll notice as an attendee that you don't have video or mic. So you'll be communicating with myself, Hannah, and my coworker, Elena, who is in the background working the chat. So if you have questions for us, for Books Inc. in particular, feel free to ask them there in the chat. She'll also be putting in the link to buy When You Breathe, as well as any other information that you might need that comes up during the conversation. And also, if you want to ask Diana and Billy any questions, you can put those in the Q&A box, which is down towards the left if you're on a computer. So any questions you want answered towards the end of the event, you can submit them there. Also, we are going to be showing some images in this event, so we suggest the best thing to do is have the view set to gallery view, and if you're on a computer, that is up to the right, and you'll see a button that says view, and there's speaker view and gallery view. In order to see the images while Diana is talking, you'll want to be in gallery view. So you can switch back and forth throughout the event, but just to give you a heads up on that. And yeah, other than that, it should be pretty easy for you to just sit back and listen and enjoy the conversation. And yes, so I'll just go ahead and get started. Thank you again for everyone who's here and to Diana and Billy. Books Inc. is the oldest independent bookstore in the West, and we couldn't say that. We wouldn't be here this long without our fellow book lovers and the support of readers and authors alike. So we always like to take the time to thank everyone who is on this call and tuning into this event. Now, tonight it is my pleasure to introduce local physician, Stanford professor, filmmaker, and now author, Diana Farid, in celebration of her debut picture book, When You Breathe. Joining her tonight is the book's illustrator, Billy Renkl. Congratulations to you both on the publication of this beautiful book. I can't wait for you to share more of the story with us, but before you do, I want to remind everyone here that Diana has partnered with a national nonprofit focusing on putting books into the hands of young readers. Reach Out and Read. Reach Out and Read is taking monetary donations on their website and will use those funds specifically to purchase copies of When You Breathe for the families they work with. If you'd like to donate, you can find the link in the chat or on our website. All right, without further ado, I'm going to pass it on to Diana and Billy.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Hannah. Thank you, Elena. Thank you, everybody who's here. It's really special to be able to share this night, celebrating When You Breathe with Billy and with all of you. You know, one of the first things that we wanted to do here tonight was give you a little bit of an understanding of the inspiration for the book, why it is in the world. And then Billy and I will move forward to having a conversation with each other, and we'll have a few more fun activities as well. You know, the book really is the product of many years of an experience for me. It starts when I was a little girl and staring at a tree. I remember distinctly staring at a tree and seeing a breeze move the leaves of the tree. And I remember thinking to myself that that breeze would be in me at some point probably, and that same breath and that same breeze could potentially be shared with somebody even on the other side of the world, or somebody well in the past or in the future. Fast forward to me going to medical school, and there, of course, I learned the biological structure and function of the respiratory system. And instead of my sense of wonder about the respiratory system being dulled, it was actually heightened. Then I took all those feelings and sort of stored them away, I guess. And finally, when I had my first child, who was a little girl, the memories were brought back. In particular, I remember holding her, and many of you parents out there have probably had the same experience, holding your baby for one of the first times and then feeling their breath. And for me, it was feeling the breath from her nose onto my neck. And the sensation that that inspired was incredible. And it took me back to that feeling I had as a little girl. And it made me wonder, how in the world am I going to impart this information about the respiratory system to her, but also a sense of awe about how her body works. And at the same time that I was starting to have children, I was taking care of patients. I was taking care of babies and young kids who would, of course, have respiratory symptoms. And I remember I started sharing this story about an upside down tree as a metaphor to how their lungs work. And I found it particularly helpful to help them understand their symptoms and also the treatment that I might be recommending to them. So all of those things combined, and after my second child was born, I started writing a poem about the respiratory system. I wanted to share this majestic journey of air into the respiratory system with them. And I knew that the voice of a girl was particularly powerful, and I wanted to impart as well, not only air's journey, but the potential beauty of that voice, power of that voice, and our connection with each other. So When You Breathe was born out of all of those experiences. We're so lucky today to have Billy with us. It's not common for an author of a picture book to have an illustrator with them, especially at their launch event. And Billy, I just want to thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited to hear you share. And one of the things that I think would be fascinating for us to hear about, and I love hearing your stories about this, is for you, why this book? How did the project come to you, and what motivated you to move forward with it, to take it on?
Well, before I answer that, I also want to thank Books Inc. and everybody at Cameron, and you especially, for writing that beautiful hymn to breathing and working with me so beautifully through the process. I also want to say, we didn't talk about this, but I did have the experience of feeling my son Will's breath, but I more acutely was aware of the power of my breath on him, that like breathing onto his neck would quiet him when he was fussy. And you know, my experience was sort of marveling at how like this thing coming out of me could be so powerful in his life, like silently, but so powerful in his life, you know, as an infant. You know, I'm an illustrator, so of course I had thought about illustrating a children's book. You know, especially, you know, reading 100,000 of them to Will, and you know, thinking about how that was my favorite part of the day, and like, wouldn't it be great to be like to make a thing that was part of that experience for other people? But no children's book ever came my way, and when I thought about it, I thought, you know, maybe eventually, you know, one will fall into my lap, and it'll be okay, and maybe I'll have, you know, a series of okay books, and you know, and eventually I'll work up to sort of the perfect book. And it turns out that when Amy called from Cameron, like she had the perfect book for me. You know, my very first book. She emailed in. She said, you know, we have this book we've acquired, and it's a really beautiful poem about breathing. Would you be interested in working on a book that you know, is about sort of the marvelous human body, and about breath, and about the cosmos, and about botany? And like I'm reading through that, and I'm thinking, those are all of my favorite things. Like every single one of my favorite things is in this project, and it just like came out of the cosmos, which was so great. Amy had seen Another book I'd illustrated for adults, a book written by my sister, Margaret. And a friend had sent an advance copy of Margaret's book to Amy, thinking Amy would like to read it. And I'm sure Amy did like to read it because it's a great book, but she also was taken with the illustrations and got in touch. And I feel so, like, what a gift for me. So I said yes with no hesitation whatsoever.
Yeah, it's really interesting how we kind of were in sync without ever communicating with each other. You know, we didn't ever actually even meet until February of 2020. And Billy, I think you had turned in all of the art already sometime in October or November of 2019.
Right.
I had finalized the words, you know, well before that, of course. And one of the things that I wanted to show you all was a picture of a sketch that I drew. I have a funny story about it. I don't know if our, Elena, were you able to put up as well the other photos, or did we lose those? Okay, so just for entertainment value, here's that first little baby that inspired me to write the book. And that cute little nose is what I wanted to show you all. And then that second picture is, the story behind that is that, you know, I was ready to try to publish this book in 2013. And I decided to go to a professional book writers and illustrators conference with a prototype in hand. And I took the liberty of using pastel to sketch every illustration that I thought would be a part of the book potentially, and to convey my idea. And recently I was going through those sketches and I found this. This is a sketch that I drew of that tree image that I had mentioned, that, I'm sorry, of the tree story that I had mentioned that inspired me back when I was a child. And so this is the illustration that I drew. And I just want to show everybody, if you can put me back on the screen. So there's a tree there, and then the cover of the book has a tree here along the spine with the tree going over. And for me, it was one of the many signs that Billy and the talent that he used to make these gorgeous and stunning illustrations, you know, that we were meant to be put together. Our art was meant to be put together. So I really, really appreciate that about you being a part of this. I'm so honored.
Did Melissa, the art director, see your sketches for the book?
Oh my goodness, no.
Oh.
No. In fact, that book that I took, those words are probably at least 5 versions back of the book. Mm-hmm. So almost unrecognizable to what currently is in the book, which is another story in and of itself.
So I want to go ahead and ask, because I imagine there are a bunch of other people who are wondering, that beautiful little girl that you just showed us pictures of, how old is she now?
Yeah, so she's 14.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this was percolating for a long time.
Right, that's right. Big passion project. So there was no intention to have it come out during the pandemic, it just did. So I wanted to share that with you all.
So we, you know, it does seem like, even though we didn't know each other and we're like separated by a continent almost, that we, and also I think I'm a good bit older than you are, but that we had sort of a parallel experience. I did not go to medical school, of course, but I took anatomy and physiology in college, and I had that same experience of thinking that the class maybe was intended to demystify the body, when actually it just made it seem like miracle after miracle after miracle. And it's really beautiful to hear that, you know, somebody who really understands the mechanics of the body shared that experience. Could you tell us some about, you know, why you like took this like understanding that's very academic, but decided to present it in a way, you know, that's really such a beautiful hymn?
Thank you so much. Yeah. For me, I noticed that when I wanted to convey this information to my patients or to my children as they were starting to grow up, you know, there was nothing out there that was truly engaging. There were informative books about anatomy, but nothing that I felt was inspiring or was conveying the awe that I was feeling about breathing. And since I'm a lover of poetry and I try to write poetry, I decided that I would use that form, that art form, to try to create a story that sticks. And in particular, you know, for me, it became a difference between informing and inspiring. And I know that from my public health work that, you know, informing doesn't often make an impact, but inspiring makes an impact. So I set out to try to inspire. And so I'll give you an example of that. You know, poetry, you know, the other reason that I kind of chose poetry as opposed to more prosaic writing is that I felt like the two matched, the awe of the respiratory system and how I felt about it, and the awe that can be conveyed with few words in very song-like manner, in a very song-like manner. So one of my favorite spreads in the book, in terms of the words, all of the spreads are my favorite illustrative spreads, but is about the heart getting the oxygenated blood from the lungs. And so I could potentially describe that to a young child as air goes into the lungs and ends up in our alveoli, and then the air exchange happens and our red blood cells get oxygen from the air, and those red blood cells go to the left side of our heart, and then our heart pumps that blood to the rest of our body. And that's informative and it's accurate and appropriate for the level of a young child, but it didn't say everything I wanted to say, and it didn't evoke a feeling. And after those many years of working on it, it just takes seconds for a piece of the sky to fill your heart. And that, for me, is much more inspiring. And so my hope was to convey that in poetry in that way.
Yeah.
I'm
not a philologist, and I'm not even 100% sure that's the right word. But you keep using the word inspire, and I love that because I think it's like it's clearly related to respiration, and you know, like pulling. Inspiration and respiration are, I think, etymologically connected. Right. So that's really beautiful.
Yeah. One of the things that I find fascinating too about art creating impact is not only the way that you were able to create art that is so profoundly beautiful, but what I'm fascinated by, I've heard you tell some stories about the found objects that you use and the way that you incorporate them into the art. And I think that's really interesting for us to hear about what's really underlying so much of what we see in this picture book. Would you mind telling some of those stories?
Sure, I'd be happy to. There are kind of two sorts of images that I think run all the way through the book, and one of them are these sort of big billowy clouds that are in the background. And I don't make up things from scratch. Generally, I'm a collage artist, and I especially enjoy finding an image and figuring out how to cooperate with what that image actually is. And those clouds are, those images are lifted from little tiny fragments in the background of antique prints. And, you know, the prints exist to show something else, to show, a view of a German city, or, something happening from mythology. And the clouds, the sky's just this little background thing that maybe in the 400 years the print has existed, no one has really paid attention to. And I thought about like that's sort of like breathing, that that it's something that goes on all the time. It's sort of in the background. You do it automatically, and you know, maybe I could sort of tie into that idea by taking these little inconsequential aspects of these backgrounds and blowing them up really big and making them central to the sort of open feeling of the image. And then the other are all these sort of beautiful flowers that are woven all the way through the book. And those flowers are all cut from greeting cards, chromolithographed greeting cards from around 1910. And, you know, I looked and looked and looked at junk stores and stuff like that for these greeting cards. That printing process is really labor intensive, and it wasn't in use very long, but it's super beautiful. And, you know, on all of these cards, Valentine's cards and Mother's Day cards and Easter cards, you know, on the back are these really beautiful sentiments of people, you know, like sending through the mail, people who are far away, you know, telling them how much they love them. And I thought, like, wouldn't it be nice if, in a way, like I could pack into the book all of that tenderness by cutting out those flowers. So you flip through the book and you only see the flowers and the leaves, but on the back of that you can't see, you know, are these really beautiful expressions of love. And I think of those as being in the book, you know, even if nobody else knows it really.
That is so incredible. So these were found postcards,
right,
of loving greetings people were sending to each other, printed in this labor-intensive, beautiful printing process.
And now they're in your book. Like,
and now they're in your book.
Yeah.
And there are sentiments behind them that connect people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's, you know, that was one of my intentions with the book, is to magnify the importance of our connection with each other. So for me, that is, you know, I didn't ask you to, nobody asked you to do that. Right. And yet somehow we were also connected in that way.
I think it might be customary to keep the author and the illustrator apart a little bit.
Yeah.
And you know, it seemed like we were connecting all over the place anyway, like regardless of their attempts to keep us apart, like psychically. Yeah,
well, and if you want to text me tomorrow and say, you know, we can't communicate, and that's okay. I'll take it. That's fine. You know, I don't want to keep people too long. People need to still have their evenings, but I thought it would be really fun to have a game, if that's okay with you, Billy. Did you get to say what you wanted to say?
Yes.
So, good. So we have a fun giveaway offer for all of you in the audience. I have planned to ask 2 questions. They will each be put into the chat. And I will also read them out loud. And you will have about 20 seconds to put your answer into the chat. And of course you can guess, but try not to Google it. And the first person to get the answer correct will win a personalized signed copy of the book, When You Breathe, along with a signed book plate. And Billy has also given us these beautiful prints that we've signed. So you'll also get a beautiful print that reflects one of the images in the book as well. So we're gonna go ahead and get started with that. I hope you're ready. So the first question is a number. I'm sorry, the first answer to the first question is going to be in number form. So it's a number. And the question is, what is the average number of times that a bronchi divides in the lungs? So if you imagine a tree, but upside down, and then that first branch, and then how many times does that first branch divide into 2? So ready, go.
My anatomy and physiology professor from 35 years ago might be disappointed that I don't know the answer to that.
I'm so sorry. I think I got cut out for a second. What did you say? Your
Oh,
anatomy and physiology?
my anatomy and physiology professor, who's one of my great heroes from college, Dr. Lee Shack, might be disappointed that I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, remember you mentioning that he wore Keds to class?
He did. He wore black Keds to class, and when I started teaching at the college level, I bought myself a pair of black Keds so I could, through some kind of sympathetic magic, learn how to be a good teacher like he was.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Well, I grew up wearing white Keds, so we have that connection too. So I don't know, Elena, if we have an answer, but I think it's probably been about 20 seconds. So we will determine the winner. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
It has been 20 seconds. The closest answer we got to the actual answer is from Doe, who guessed 24.
Okay, I think we'll give it to Doe because it's an average.
Yes.
And it is about that. It's 23. But I think that's incredibly close enough. There's obviously variation in human anatomy, so that's fine. That's great. Wonderful. Congratulations, Doe. And then the next question is, so the branches divide 23 times. If you calculate that out, it's about more than 8 million ends. And each of those ends has all these little pockets of air called alveoli, or little buds that hold air. I'm so sorry, I misspoke, sort of sacs of air. And the next question is, if you were to take all of the alveoli, all of the sacs of air where air exchange happens, where oxygen gets transmitted into our red blood cells, and you were to lay them flat, about what size sport court would they be? And I'll give you 4 options: ping pong table, racquetball court, tennis court, or a football field. Ready, go.
I think you had a bunch of answers even before you finished the question.
Yay. So maybe we'll give it about 10, 15 more seconds.
Diana, while they're busy answering, are there other aspects of the body that you look forward to writing about in this way?
Oh my goodness, of course. I've started drafts for 3 others, actually. Given how long it took me to sort of finalize Breathe, I'm being generous with myself, but I have When You See in the works, When You Sleep, and When You Beat. So sleeping, our circulatory system, and our eye function. And really for me, actually, just as exciting about being able to maybe convey a human biology concept to young kids is conveying a message of quality. So for When You Breathe, I think one of those is our interconnectedness and the beauty that we're all made of. And for the others, I have similar plans.
Well,
So,
that is great. That is great news. I can't wait to read those.
How about you, Billy?
I have some things that I'm thinking about, but I was waiting to see how this went before I
Yes. No, but I mean, do you have anything coming up in terms of artwork or picture book projects, other projects?
There are things that I work on in the studio as a fine artist all the time. Some long-term projects that eventually I'll exhibit, but nothing in publishing right now.
I think probably our time's up.
We do have a winner. Danielle got the second question correct. She guessed tennis court very quickly. So we'll be in contact with both winners to make sure you get your prize packages. I will message you in the chat momentarily privately, so keep an eye out for that. Also, everybody agrees that Billy needs to illustrate all of your books.
Well, yes, Of course, that's a dream of mine. I'm trying to not go there yet. I don't want anybody to feel pressured. We gotta make When You Breathe successful first. So, I think now we will segue into Q&A. And then just so everybody knows, the final fun event for this party is going to be a deep breathing activity. So I will go ahead and lead for just a few minutes, something fun for us to sort of help us center ourselves that's inspired by the book. So I hope you can stick around for that.
All right, so as people, they were so excited about the questions from you, Diana, that they didn't put their questions in just yet. So we'll give them a minute. Someone did. Sure. But I did want to ask, Diana, if you could show the book, the inside of the book. Billy, it looks like you used a lot of different techniques for your art. Do you want to talk a little bit more about what you do to make one of those art layouts?
Well, you know, I mentioned that I'm essentially a collage artist, and in my studio practice, I work exclusively, you know, with images, you know, as sort of as I stumble on them. But sometimes in an assignment like this, I have to make the images that I'm then going to cut out and glue down. So I used a cyanotype process on this one that Diana's holding up. There are those flowers from the chromolithographed greeting cards. The leaves, I had custom rubber stamps made and stamped those leaves on lots of different papers, and the backgrounds are painted with gouache. But really, I'm, you know, like the tree trunk, like that's like I made that texture on a brown piece of paper, but then I cut it out to make the tree trunk. So it's sometimes I'm generating the stuff, but always I'm cutting them out. I'm then treating those like found things.
Beautiful. Really.
That's the other thing that's so beautiful about Billy's art. You know, a lot of picture books now are really, the art is made digitally, and Billy almost 100%. If I'm saying that correctly, Billy, made this all by hand. I mean,
it is all analog.
Yeah.
There were little sort of corrections that were made digitally, but the art was all by hand. Which makes me want to ask, when you started drafting this, did you write it out with your hand or did you type it?
I did write it out by hand.
That does not surprise me at all.
No. Yeah, that's my
okay.
go-to. That's my usual. Yeah. In fact, I'm working on a novel in verse, and that whole first draft is written by hand. Mm-hmm. So the other thing I wanted to mention to folks is I got to see this art in person last December, and literally the publisher and the editor and the art director and I were kind of friendly, having a friendly sort of competition about who might be able to potentially purchase one, even though I think, you know, we were presuming that might even be able to be an option, which I'm sure they're not. But I mean, it was that stunning and gorgeous. It was so beautiful. Which reminds me, before the Q&A, if it would be okay for me to thank them. You know, the publishers at Cameron, they are a boutique publishing house that has recently been acquired by Abrams. That's how good they are. Nina and Chris Gruner really wanted to create books that need to be books. And this and their other picture books are examples of the stunning work that they create. And then, of course, Amy Noveski, the editor, who was the first person to say yes to me on this project. I cannot thank her enough for her kindness and generosity and guidance. And then Melissa Greenberg, I know you had a wonderful relationship with, the art director, and then Callan Van Paris, who's helping us. So just really want to give a big shout out to them. Thank you all so much for making it happen.
Yeah, Amy's the first person that I talked with also. And then much of my interaction was with Melissa, and I've never done a picture book before. So I, like, heroically, she sort of coached me through pacing and things like that. And like, all of them were a delight to work with.
Good. I'm glad to hear it. We do have a few questions popping up. One of them, I think we answered. It was about future collaborations with you. I know it sounded like it wasn't quite officially in the works, but a dream that the two of you would be able to work together again, correct?
Well, you know, we'll have to give that to Cameron to decide if that's the best pairing.
We'll have to pitch
Yeah.
that. All right. Forgive me if I mispronounce your name. Lila, she's asking if both of you, what your absolute favorite part of the entire process is, and if there's like one specific moment or aspect that just filled your soul when working on this project.
That's a great question. For me, without a doubt, it was seeing the original art and then seeing the galleys. I could not, it still is really hard for me to wrap my head and heart around the fact that I worked so hard to communicate the feelings and the ideas that I was having, and so many other people, but in particular, obviously Billy, were able to translate that into art that was absolutely beyond what I could have imagined. And so that was incredibly special for me.
For me, she just recreated that moment just then. You know, the text came to me, Amy sent me the text, and it was so beautiful. And it was obviously so heartfelt by this author that I didn't know anything about, that, you know, I'd never talked with or met. And, you know, in a little bit, I was sort of paralyzed that I wouldn't do something that she thought like lived up to the book, that, you know, she'd poured her heart into this poem, and, you know, what if I messed it up? When I worked on it, you know, when I finally did hear from Diana that she loved the work, like that was so incredibly rewarding to know that I hadn't like misspent this opportunity to, you know, work on such a beautiful project.
That's lovely. We do have, let's see, this one is from Sheree. Diana, if you could wave a magic wand, how would you love to see your book used with children, with parents, teachers, and more?
Wow, that's such a good question. So there are so many levels I think that the book can be applied. One, of course, is on the surface, the way to talk about the science of the respiratory system in an engaging way. So doing read alouds, maybe thinking about some of the different words in the back. The very back of the book has a glossary of very simple definitions of the science topics, and each of those, of course, could be a springboard. And then there's a level deeper. For example, the first spread talks about, you know, it says tree leaves sway. Tree leaves sway when it flows by. Birds need it to flutter and fly. It carries your favorite tune. There is a scientific concept to explore in each of those phrases, right? There's leaves and how they get energy from the air. So there's environmental concepts. There's flight and lift of a bird wing, you know, in that second line. And even in the third line, there's how sound and music travels in the air. So there's lots of springboards. I think beyond that, though, you know, there's also this level of poetry and art being important for communicating stories. So inspiring kids to grab books, hold on to them, and engage with them. And then even more beyond that, you know, one of my big intentions in creating this book was I really wanted people to understand on a very physical and atomic level that we are all connected. There is so much focus now in school in particular, but in our world in general, to understand how language processes in a computer and coding, for example. And yet we're walking around with these marvelous machines, and we don't talk about the language that's occurring within our own bodies. and the language that occurs between the circuitry of our hearts and our souls. And I think if that was emphasized, I would hope that if this book, if that underlying story in this book is understood, my hope would be that it creates a little bit more understanding, a little bit more connection between the human family. You know, somebody asked what warmed my soul. What warmed my soul also, if I may be so frank, is that the little girl in this book is not necessarily pink or white. She is, in a way, she's sort of these all colors in one, which really speaks to our times beyond the pandemic, but also to understanding how much we need each other, and we need each other's love and connection. So I know that was a really long-winded answer, but honestly, if I were able to wave a magic wand, that would be it. Of course, there are also printables and activities for teachers on my website, and Cameron probably will have them up on their website at some point. So those are there too, but that I think is really the underlying why behind the book.
Well, someone asked a follow-up question that, or a question that kind of fits along with it, and that's from Brittany. She's wondering if you've had a chance to read, to do a reading of your own book with any patients, if you've been able to use it in practice.
That's a great question. Wouldn't it be funny? So I work at the Stanford Student Health Center. So my patients age and range from 16 to 50s probably, but you know, they're mainly in their 20s and 30s. So that would be hilarious. I should, but I haven't.
I'll enjoy picture books and poetry.
But I have been, but I have been able to see my younger two children. I have 4 kids. My younger 2 are in 1st and 3rd grade, and I've been able to watch their teachers read it to the kids. And that has been really special. Yeah.
Someone did ask, Rachel asked Diana if you had worked with poetry teachers, or if you were intuitively self-taught for your own writing.
You know, more recently I have taken a number of workshops and attended conferences. I don't have any formal training beyond that, but I was a really big reader after a certain age of poetry. Yeah, in my teens and in my 20s, when I wasn't, you know, in a hospital or in a clinic, if I wasn't exhausted, then that's usually the first thing I would go to.
All right, let's see. So here's one that's a pretty simple question. Someone's asking, Paula's asking if Billy's prints are available for sale. Do you have a site, Billy, that we can direct people to?
I don't sell prints. I'm no good at that sort of thing, like to keep track of it and pack them and ship them. But also, in terms of the artwork, I'm pretty committed to the work. If it's going to hang on somebody's wall, like physically being the work, you know, as a collage, the surface and the edge and like all that matters. And so it hasn't ever made sense to make prints really. So they're not available.
But you can buy a copy of When You Breathe, and you
can. You can like several copies and cut them up. If you like.
You can make your own collages, right? Buy 2, cut one up, and enjoy the other as a book.
Right, but that's flattering that somebody asked.
Yeah.
And people, you know, we have these prints. I have these prints. So people that buy the book through Books Inc., especially through this event or at the Palo Alto site, prints will be in the books. I've been trying to put prints in all of the books that I signed. There might be a few here and there that I've missed, but that's something that I am working on, so that at least this print, you know, is available.
Beautiful. So those of you who bought books through Eventbrite, and then if you're buying them tonight, we'll try to get some snuck in there as well. Diana is working with our Palo Alto store, so she'll be coming in and signing more copies. So if you're ordering books through Books Inc., we may be able to get you a signed copy with prints as long as supplies last. So I'll just reiterate that. And then let's see, we had, there was a good one that I had. anonymous attendee is wondering if there is a specific quote, and I'll ask this for both of you, if there's a specific quote in this book that really hit you to the core, or a favorite. I'm sure it's hard for Diana, but do you have one, Billy?
Well, I mean, when that line about the sky being in the heart came to me, I mean, I remember the moment that I thought of it. That's probably one of the more inspiring stanzas in the book. It just takes seconds for a piece of the sky to fill your heart.
It's beautiful.
The one that really touched me, and maybe this is why, the spread of the girl reaching up and like touching a star, that was the one I struggled with the most. To me, that seemed like sort of the moment in the book that the book was building to, and I just did sketch after sketch after sketch, and none of them seemed to work. I just felt all this responsibility to get that one especially right. And I do think that's beautiful, where it says, above the tree leaves, beyond the birds, stardust sparkles in your song. And I think it was Melissa's choice to like pause there, and the next, it's the facing page that has, and the universe rings with it. And that's so beautiful. And it sort of all by itself on that page, it was really powerful.
Yeah, I really wanted the readers to, even if it's not something they understand because they're 3 or 5, when it's read to them, that soul knowing, that heart knowing that their voice matters and has value and that they are worthy. For me, that was really something I wanted to convey. And I agree with Billy. I think that spread and that line does that too.
And that it connects them to like the universe. That's so beautiful.
I agree. And I know that we want to do the breathing exercise, so I'm going to finish with more of a comment. It's not a question, but Christina wrote some very kind words, so I'll read this to you. So she said, "Understanding how our lungs work and the journey of air into breath is so timely. I know the vision of this book started well before our current moment in time, but I am just both curious and excited about how this book will inspire children to become interested in science, something we desperately need right now. So this perhaps isn't a question, but more of a thank you. Thank you to Diana and Billy for creating a work that will inspire future artists, scientists, doctors, and more." And I agree with the sentiment. So thank you, Christina, for your lovely words.
Thank you, Christina.
Thank you, Diana and Billy. There were some questions we didn't get to, so thank you to everybody who answered questions, but we just want to make sure that we can do our breathing exercise and be calm, and then released into the world to do what comes next, whether you're in Billy's time zone and getting ready for bed, or on the California side, the West Coast, getting ready for dinner maybe. So thank you again for everyone. And then Diana, please lead us. I'm going to join, but I'm going to do it without the video.
Yes. This is a time to get comfortable. So if you'd like to turn, close your eyes or turn the screen off, that's absolutely fine. So I'm going to lead you on a little breathing exercise inspired by the script, and we will say goodnight. I'm sorry, inspired by the book. So to begin, find a comfortable position in your chair with your feet planted firmly on the ground. You can close your eyes, or you can leave them open slightly, but allow your gaze to rest unfocused. Go ahead and place a hand, palm open and flat, against your belly, just above the belly button. Allow those muscles in your abdomen to relax, and then take a deep, slow breath. Feel your hand rising and falling with the rhythm of your breathing. And see if you can intentionally take in a little bit more air with each breath. Notice any changes that occur as you breathe this way. You can leave your hand on your belly or you can remove it. And now count slowly to 5 with your next breath. As you take it in, try to count to 5. And then count to 5 as you exhale. And then maybe with one of your next breaths, try to count to 6. And then as you're exhaling, count out to 6. And then maybe with your next breath, take it to 7. And then out to 7. And now as you're doing that, I'd like you to imagine your favorite color. Set it aglow. Let that glow of colored light surround every part of you. Now imagine that glow making its way into your nose and mouth as you inhale. Then into the branches of the lungs. And then that glow lights up those hundreds of millions of alveoli. And they're all glowing with your breath. See the light crossing into your blood. Feel your heart sending that light throughout every part of you. Your toes, your fingers, your legs, your arms, your eyes, your ears. Take in a few more slow, deep breaths while you imagine that light filling you. When you breathe, light in, light out, connected to everything and everything to you. And when you're ready, if you want, you can open your eyes. Thank you everybody for being here. I must give a big thanks also to my husband, John, and my 4 kids, Ella, Elijah, Asher, River. I love you all. Billy, I cannot thank you enough. Every day I'm thankful for you. And thank you as well, Hannah and Elena, for hosting this. This was really, really wonderful for us.
Thank you. I hope you have a wonderful night, everyone. Diana, thank you so much. I'll be in contact with you about getting more books signed. And Billy, it's been wonderful. I hope I see you around in the future. Maybe again with Diana, we'll see, as everybody's hoping. So thank you, everybody who joined us, and have a great night. You're getting lots of love in the chat. So just, you know, everyone's congratulating you and telling you how much they loved tonight's event and your book, so we really appreciate it. Thank you. If you missed any parts of this, it will be recorded and up on YouTube, so you can come in and watch it again, and practice your breathing exercises once again. And thank you. So good night.
Thank you.